The Galactic Security Council's emergency session began with the usual pomp and circumstance, but Chief Observer Angsiplik could tell something was different. The normally stoic Centaurian delegates were shifting nervously in their hover seats, and the crystalline archons were vibrating at frequencies that indicated extreme distress. "Play the recording." First speaker Zena commanded, her bioluminescent patterns flashing with barely contained anxiety. The holographic display flickered to life, showing the aftermath of what should have been a routine pirate attack on Research Station Epsilon 17. Instead of the expected scenes of destruction and loss, they watched as a single human female methodically hunted down each member of the notorious Kranix raiding party. Sarah Chen, terraforming specialist and sole survivor of the station's original crew, moved through the station's compromised sections with a grace that seemed impossible in the fluctuating gravity. The recording showed her using the very environmental hazards that had killed her colleagues to her advantage, venting atmosphere to trap raiders, using radiation leaks as barriers, and somehow remaining fully functional despite exposure to conditions that should have been lethal. "Impossible," whispered Representative Catal of the Meridian Confluence. The radiation levels in that section were enough to kill even a shielded drachnid. "How is she still alive?" "Humans," Engstlick explained, mandibles clicking with a mixture of admiration and fear, evolved on a planet that bombards them with radiation daily. They call it sunlight and expose themselves to it voluntarily, for recreation. The council watched as Sarah sealed off another section, trapping 3 pirates in a maintenance bay. Instead of leaving them to die, she negotiated their surrender, treating their wounds with the station's limited medical supplies. The pirates, hardened criminals who had terrorized 3 sectors, meekly submitted to her authority. "What truly concerns us," First Speaker Zena continued, "is not just her survival, but her efficiency. She not only protected the station's quantum core from theft, but also managed to maintain essential systems, treat the wounded, and establish contact with nearby outposts, all while operating in conditions we classified as unsurvivable." The recording shifted to Sarah's first contact with the rescue fleet. She appeared on their screens, environmental suit patched with maintenance tape, calmly reporting the situation while conducting repairs on an exposed deck. Behind her, stellar radiation from a nearby pulsar painted the sky in deadly colors. "Welcome to Epsilon 17, she had said, wiping carbon scoring from her faceplate. "Sorry about the mess. The life support is back online in sections C through F, and I've got the raiders secured in the medical bay. Though you might want to hurry. We're running low on coffee." The recording ended, leaving the council chamber in stunned silence. First Speaker Zena's bioluminescence had dimmed to a troubled azure. "The human has requested permission to remain on station and continue her work. She claims the attack has given her, quote, interesting ideas about improving our defensive systems. Surely we're not considering." Catal began. "She single-handedly defended a strategic installation that our best security forces claimed was indefensible," Angstlick interrupted. "She did it without causing a single death, while protecting both the station's sensitive research and the lives of her attackers. And she did it all without violating a single regulation. That's what worries us," Zena admitted. "She operated within our parameters while completely upending our understanding of what's possible." The station's automated systems logged her vital signs during the incident. "By our medical standards, she should have died at least 7 times. The council's attention turned to a new hologram, showing Sarah Chen's current activities. She was calmly conducting repairs on the station's exterior, hanging from a maintenance tether above an abyss of space. Occasionally, she would pause her work to wave at the council's observation drones, as if dangling above certain death was perfectly normal. Perhaps, Engstlick suggested, mandibles forming what passed for a smile among his species, we should stop trying to understand how she survived, and start learning what she can teach us. "You can't be serious," Catal protested. "She's clearly dangerous." "Yes," Engstlick agreed. "She is dangerous. But she's dangerous in exactly the way we need right now. The Kranix pirates have terrorized our shipping lanes for decades because we thought defending certain routes was impossible. She just proved otherwise. First speaker Zena's patterns shifted to a thoughtful green. You're suggesting we not only allow her to stay but expand her authority. I'm suggesting, Angstlick replied, that we finally acknowledge what humans have been showing us since they joined the galactic community. What we consider impossible is merely their starting point. The council watched as Sarah finished her repairs, tested her work with meticulous care, and then did something that caused several members to emit distress signals. She jumped from one maintenance platform to another, crossing a gap that even their most advanced species would have needed a safety harness to attempt. She landed perfectly, checked her handiwork one final time, and began singing to herself as she packed up her tools. The station's sensors identified the song as something called Walking on Sunshine. Very well, first speaker Zena decided, her patterns now showing the full spectrum of resignation and curiosity. We'll grant her request, but I want a full observation team in place. If she's going to rewrite our understanding of what's possible, we should at least document it properly. As the council adjourned, Angstlick lingered, watching Sarah work. She had moved on to recalibrating the station's defensive shields, making adjustments that their engineers had deemed too dangerous to attempt manually. She worked with the confidence of someone who didn't just face the impossible, she expected to overcome it. And that, Angstlick realized, was what truly set humans apart. It wasn't their durability or their adaptability, impressive as those traits were. It was their absolute conviction that impossible was just another problem waiting to be solved. The observation drone recorded Sarah's voice as she filed her daily report. Day 47 post-incident. Shield modifications proceeding ahead of schedule. Note to engineering. Humans really need better coffee machines in the repair bays. Also, the raiders have agreed to help with the repairs. Turns out near-death experiences and manual labor are excellent rehabilitation tools. Who knew? Angstlick made a note to research this coffee substance. Clearly, it was yet another example of humanity's fascinating relationship with voluntary chemical enhancement. He had a feeling he would be making many such notes in the days to come. Breaking protocol. The distress call came during what Sarah Chen had dubbed Tuesday movie night with her reformed pirates. The station's warning systems interrupted a classic Earth film about something called dinosaurs, which several of her alien crew members refused to believe had actually existed. Priority 1 distress signal, the AI announced. Refugee convoy under attack in the Nexus corridor. All available vessels requested for immediate assistance. Sarah was moving before the message finished playing. Prep the station's emergency response shuttle, she ordered, already pulling on her modified environment suit. Crix, Ven, you're with me. The rest of you, maintain station operations. But Captain Crix, her former pirate now turned security officer, chittered nervously. The Nexus corridor is undergoing a Class 5 solar storm. The Galactic Council has declared it a no-travel zone for the next 3 cycles. Which is exactly why those refugees need help now, Sarah replied, checking her suit's seals. Everyone else will be following protocol and staying away. Perfect time for an ambush. The Council observation drone followed her to the shuttle bay, its operators no doubt already composing strongly worded reports about human recklessness. Sarah had learned to ignore them. After 3 months of her unorthodox management of Epsilon 17, they should be used to it by now. The emergency shuttle, originally designed for basic rescue operations, had undergone what Sarah called necessary modifications. The Council called them horrifying violations of safety protocols. The additions included reinforced radiation shielding, modular repair systems, and what Sarah's Earth colleagues would recognize as the space equivalent of a heavily modified off-road vehicle. Captain, the station's AI interrupted as they prepared for launch. I must inform you that entering the Nexus corridor during a solar storm violates 17 different safety regulations. Noted, Sarah replied, powering up the engines. Log it as a training exercise in extreme conditions rescue operations. The AI paused, its processors almost audibly trying to reconcile this interpretation with its programming. That is not technically incorrect, it finally admitted. The shuttle launched into space, its modified engines pushing against the solar storm's electromagnetic interference. Sarah piloted manually, something that made both her alien crew members and the observation drone's operators extremely uncomfortable. But in conditions like these, human reflexes and instinct proved more reliable than automated systems. Approaching the convoy's last known coordinates, Venn reported, his crystalline form vibrating with anxiety. Energy signatures indicate at least 3 raider vessels, heavy weapons. Good, Sarah said, earning alarmed looks from her crew. That means they're too big to maneuver effectively in this storm. Crix, prep the emergency pods. Venn, I need you on damage control. The scene that greeted them was chaos incarnate. 3 massive raider ships surrounded a small convoy of refugee vessels, their weapons barely hampered by the storm that had trapped their prey. The refugees, their ships not designed for combat, had formed a defensive circle around their most vulnerable vessels. Sarah's first action shocked everyone watching. She flew directly into the heart of the solar storm. Captain, Crix's mandibles clicked rapidly in distress. The radiation levels are exactly why this will work, Sarah finished, her hand steady on the controls. Trust me. What followed would be studied in galactic defense academies for years to come, though usually with warnings about not attempting to replicate it. Sarah used the solar storm itself as a weapon, diving in and out of radiation waves that would have fried most ship systems, using electromagnetic pulses to disrupt the raiders' targeting systems, and generally proving that what most species considered certain death was, to a human, just another set of environmental conditions to exploit. Impossible, one of the raider captains transmitted, watching their target dance through conditions that should have killed everyone aboard. What kind of ship is that? Hi there, Sarah responded cheerfully, her shuttle emerging from a particularly violent solar flare to disable the raiders' primary weapons. Epsilon 17 emergency response. Would you like to surrender now, or should we keep playing? The battle, if it could be called that, lasted less than 20 minutes. Sarah's shuttle, moving like a leaf in a hurricane to outside observers, but with precise purpose to those who understood stellar navigation, systematically disabled each raider vessel while simultaneously deploying emergency shields around the most damaged refugee ships. When it was over, Sarah docked with the refugee convoy's lead ship as casually as if she were parking at a space station. The observation drone recorded her first meeting with the convoy's leaders, who belonged to a species that could literally see energy fields. By the first light, their leader gasped, their aura showing patterns of disbelief. The radiation levels in your shuttle's hull. How is your crew still alive? Oh, that. Sarah checked her suit's radiation meter. That's not too bad. You should see what we deal with during solar flare season back home. Though I could really use some coffee. Anyone know if the refugees have any? Later, after the refugees were safely escorted to the nearest sanctuary station and the raiders were taken into custody, first speaker Zena personally contacted Sarah. Your actions, the first speaker began, her patterns showing a complex mix of emotions, violated nearly every safety protocol we have established for rescue operations. Yes, Sarah agreed, already working on repairs to her shuttle's scorched hull. But they worked. That, Zena replied, is precisely what concerns us. You're changing how our people think about what's possible, Captain Chen. Some consider this dangerous. Sarah paused in her repairs, considering this. With respect, first speaker, dangerous is watching people die because we're too afraid to try something new. Humans don't break protocols just for fun. We do it because sometimes survival requires adaptation. The first speaker's patterns shifted to what Sarah had learned to recognize as reluctant acceptance. The refugee convoy's leaders have requested human personnel be assigned to their protection for the remainder of their journey. Really? Sarah grinned. I'll need to requisition more coffee. We've already arranged for a supply to be delivered, Zena replied, her patterns now showing something close to amusement, along with official recognition of your, what did you call it? Training exercise in extreme conditions rescue operations. After the transmission ended, Sarah returned to repairing her shuttle, humming another Earth song that puzzled her alien crew. Something about riding through the danger zone. The observation drone recorded her final log entry for the day. Note to self: need to adjust the shuttle's radiation shielding. It's a bit too restrictive in the upper bands. Also, someone please tell the Council that their definition of unsurvivable conditions needs updating. Again. The Crucible. Trading Station Helios was considered the crown jewel of the Galactic Alliance's commercial network. The massive structure, home to over 2 million beings from across the galaxy, orbited the sweet spot between 3 major trade routes. Its quantum-powered environmental systems could accommodate nearly any known species, from methane-breathing Clothari to the plasma-based Vorax entities, which made it all the more terrifying when those systems began to fail. Sarah Chen was accompanying a refugee transport when the distress call reached her shuttle. The message was brief but clear. An unknown anomaly was consuming Helios' power grid. Environmental controls were failing across multiple sectors, and evacuation attempts were being hampered by unprecedented gravitational fluctuations. Change course, she ordered immediately. Maximum speed to Helios. Captain, Crix began, his mandibles twitching with concern. Our shuttle's not rated for full emergency response operations. Sarah finished. I know. We'll upgrade our rating after we save the station. When they arrived, the situation was worse than reported. Massive energy tendrils, seemingly composed of pure quantum distortion, wrapped around Helios like hungry vines. Evacuation ships struggled against gravitational eddies that twisted space itself. The station's outer rings had already gone dark, their environmental systems failing. The Council's emergency response fleet hung back at a safe distance, their sensors overwhelmed by readings that defied their understanding of physics. Sarah listened to their communications with growing frustration. This is Captain Chen of Epsilon 17 Emergency Response, she broadcast. I'm going to need a status update and full access to the station's systems. Chen. First speaker Zena's voice crackled through the quantum static. The Council has declared Helios a total loss. We're focusing on evacuation. With all due respect, first speaker, Sarah interrupted, already guiding her shuttle through the gravitational chaos. 2 million people call this station home. I'm not writing it off until I understand what we're dealing with. She turned to her crew. Ven, I need everything you can tell me about those energy patterns. Crix, get me a channel to the station's engineering team, whoever's still at their post. The next few hours became legend in galactic history. Sarah's shuttle, modified far beyond its original specifications, navigated the quantum storm like a leaf riding a hurricane. The observation drone struggled to keep up as she moved from section to section, coordinating with the remaining station crew, studying the anomaly's behavior, and refusing to accept the impossible odds. It's not random, she announced suddenly, after watching the energy tendrils' movement patterns. This is a feedback loop. The station's quantum core is trying to compensate for some kind of dimensional breach, but each adjustment is making it worse. Impossible. The station's chief engineer, a Meridian named Zalthor, argued. Our containment protocols are based on normal space-time assumptions, Sarah finished. But look at these readings. The core isn't failing. It's trying to adapt to something it doesn't understand, something from outside our normal dimensional boundaries. She pulled up the station's original blueprints, her mind racing. The station's founders built it here because of the intersection of trade routes, but what if they chose this spot for another reason? These energy patterns, they're similar to what we see in Earth's Bermuda Triangle. Your planet has a region of dimensional instability. Zalthor asked, his crystalline form vibrating with shock. And you still send ships through it. We even have tourism there. Sarah replied absently, focused on her calculations. The point is, we learned to navigate it. And right now, your quantum core is trying to do the same thing. It's trying to navigate a dimensional anomaly it was never designed to handle. What followed was either brilliance or madness, depending on who you asked. Sarah proposed treating the quantum core not as a power source, but as a dimensional anchor. Instead of fighting the anomaly, they would use the core to stabilize it, creating a controlled breach that could be contained and eventually close. "This is insanity," one council member transmitted. "The energy requirements alone are within our capabilities if we reroute power from the evacuation shields," Sarah countered. "Those aren't doing much good anyway. Without those shields, the station will be exposed to the full force of the anomaly." "Yes," Sarah agreed, already moving to implement her plan. "That's exactly what we need. Sometimes you have to dive into the storm to survive it." The process nearly tore the station apart. As evacuation ships retreated to safe distances, Sarah and a volunteer crew of engineers worked to essentially turn Helios itself into a dimensional stabilization device. The quantum core pulsed with energies that should have been impossible to control, while reality itself seemed to bend around them. "Warning," the station's AI announced calmly. "Hull integrity at 15%. Environmental systems critical. Quantum core temperature exceeding known measurement scales." "Just a little longer," Sarah muttered, her hands flying over control panels that were literally melting under the dimensional stress. She had discarded her protective gear, claiming it slowed her down too much. Then route all remaining power to the core containment field. "Crix, I need those gravitational anchors at full strength." The observation drone's footage of what happened next was studied by scientists for decades. The quantum tendrils, instead of tearing the station apart, began to weave themselves into a controlled pattern. The dimensional breach, rather than expanding, started to collapse in on itself. Helios, instead of being destroyed, became something entirely new, a stable gateway between dimensional boundaries. When it was over, the station hung in space, changed but intact. Its quantum core now pulsed with a new type of energy, one that would revolutionize galactic understanding of dimensional physics. And in the control room, Sarah Chen finally sat down, accepted a cup of coffee from a shaking Crix, and began writing her report. "Tell the council," she said, sipping her coffee, "that Helios is now home to the galaxy's first controlled dimensional intersection point. Also, we're going to need new safety protocols." Again. The first speaker's response was transmitted across all channels. "Captain Chen, the council requests your immediate presence for a full debriefing. And we've already ordered more coffee." Paradigm shift. The Grand Assembly Hall of the Galactic Council had never been so crowded. Representatives from every member species packed the tiered seating, their varied forms creating a living tapestry of galactic diversity. At the center of it all stood Sarah Chen, still wearing her scorched station uniform, facing the High Council's scrutiny. "Let us be clear," first speaker Zena began, her bioluminescent patterns shifting through complex emotions. "In the past standard year, you have survived an attack that should have been unsurvivable, turned a research station into an unauthorized emergency response center, repeatedly violated safety protocols to save refugees, and now transformed the galaxy's largest trading station into a stable dimensional intersection point." Sarah supplied helpfully. "Though I prefer to call it a crossroads. Easier to explain to the tourists." Tourists. A Meridian counselor's crystalline form vibrated with alarm. "You expect people to voluntarily visit a site of dimensional instability." "We've already received 12,000 booking requests," Sarah confirmed. "Turns out lots of species share humanity's curiosity about dimensional physics. Who knew?" The observation drone recorded the ripple of murmurs through the assembly. Sarah stood calmly, occasionally sipping from her ever-present coffee cup, as the council tried to process this latest example of human unpredictability. "This brings us to the matter at hand," Zena continued. Your actions have forced us to reconsider many of our fundamental assumptions about humans, about safety protocols, and about what is possible. Screens around the hall displayed footage from Sarah's various incidents over the past year. The pirates she'd converted into emergency responders, the refugees she'd saved by flying into solar storms, the station she'd saved by essentially rewriting the laws of physics. The Galactic Science Academy, a hive mind representative announced, compound eyes flickering with excitement, has submitted a formal request to establish a new field of study, human adaptive response theory. They believe your species' approach to problem solving represents a fundamental shift in our understanding of crisis management. We're just practical, Sarah shrugged. When something doesn't work, we try something else. Simple as that. Simple? Another counselor sputtered. You turned a quantum core into a dimensional stabilizer using maintenance tools and improvised calculations. Well, yeah, Sarah replied. Because it needed to be done, and we didn't have time to requisition proper equipment. Sometimes you have to work with what you have. The assembly hall erupted in a chaos of voices, each species trying to understand this fundamentally human approach to the impossible. Sarah waited patiently, knowing from experience that sometimes other species needed time to process human solutions. Finally, first speaker Zena raised all four appendages for silence. Captain Chen, your methods are unorthodox, your disregard for established protocols is legendary, and your success rate defies statistical analysis, which is why the Council has reached an unprecedented decision. Sarah raised an eyebrow, taking another sip of coffee. We are establishing a new division within the Galactic Alliance, Zena announced. The Emergency Innovation and Response Department. Its mandate will be to approach crisis with human creativity. And we want you to lead it. The silence that followed was profound. Sarah lowered her coffee cup slowly. You want me to teach other species to think like humans? She asked carefully. We want you to help bridge the gap between what we believe is possible and what humans prove is possible, Zena corrected. Your species has shown us that our limitations are often self-imposed. Perhaps it's time we learn to move beyond them. Sarah considered this, thinking of her mixed species crew, of the reformed pirates who'd learned to be heroes, of the refugees who'd discovered their own courage in the face of impossible odds. I'll need complete operational freedom, she said finally. No more committees debating whether something is too dangerous to try. Granted, Zena replied, patterns showing resignation mixed with anticipation. My current crew stays with me. Of course, and I want coffee stations installed in all emergency response vessels. Good coffee, not that synthesized stuff. This last request caused another ripple of murmurs through the assembly. The hive mind representative leaned forward. Our analysis suggests that this coffee substance is a mild neurotoxin that humans have adapted to consume for enhanced performance. Is it truly necessary for emergency operations? Trust me, Sarah grinned. You haven't seen anything yet. I haven't even introduced you to energy drinks. The observation drone captured the exact moment the Council realized they might have created something even more unpredictable than a human emergency responder. They had authorized a human to teach others how to think like humans. One last thing, Sarah added, pulling up a holographic display. Since we're officially sanctioning human problem-solving methods now, I have some suggestions about updating the Galactic Emergency Response Manual, starting with removing the word impossible from all protocols. Later, as the assembly dispersed, first speaker Zena approached Sarah privately. Are you certain about this, Captain? Teaching other species to embrace human methods could fundamentally change our civilization. Sarah smiled, thinking of all the times she'd watched her alien crew members begin to understand, to see possibilities where before they had only seen limitations. That's the thing about humans, first speaker. We don't just adapt to the universe. We help the universe adapt with us. Now about those energy drinks. Evolution's children. One standard year after the establishment of the Emergency Innovation and Response Department, quickly nicknamed the Impossible Corps by its human members, First speaker Zena stood at her observation post aboard the newly commissioned training vessel Hope's Horizon. Below her, the latest class of recruits was going through what humans called graduation exercises. They're attempting a synchronized emergency response drill in an artificial gravity well. Angstlick explained, mandibles clicking with pride. Something we would have considered suicidal just a year ago. The observation drone tracked a team of mixed species, a crystalline Arxen, 2 hive-mind pilots, and a reformed Kranix pirate, as they maneuvered their shuttle through conditions that simulated multiple system failures. Their movements were precise, coordinated, and most surprisingly, confident. Status report. Sarah Chen's voice crackled over the comm. She was supervising from a control room filled with empty coffee cups and holographic displays. Team 3, talk to me about that power fluctuation. Rerouting auxiliary power through the maintenance systems, the Arxian responded, their crystalline form vibrating with excitement rather than fear. Just like you taught us, Captain. Sometimes the back door is the best door. Team 2, how's that radiation leak simulation treating you? Better than expected, a hive mind pilot replied. We're using it to power our emergency shields, actually. Waste not, want not, right? Sarah's laugh filled the channel. Now you're thinking like humans. All right, let's kick it up a notch. Initiating Scenario Omega-7. The observation drone recorded several council members flinching as the training field erupted into what appeared to be complete chaos. Multiple system failures, gravitational anomalies, and simulated hostile contacts appeared simultaneously. But instead of panic, the response teams showed something unprecedented. They adapted. Each team approached their challenges with what could only be described as human creativity, finding solutions that no training manual had ever contemplated. Remarkable, Zena murmured, her patterns shifting through shades of wonder. They're not just copying human methods, they're developing their own innovations based on human principles. That's what Sarah's been trying to teach them, Angstlick agreed. Not to think exactly like humans, but to understand the human approach to impossibility. To see challenges as opportunities rather than obstacles. The training session concluded with all teams successfully completing their missions, using methods that would have been considered insane a year ago. As the recruits gathered in the main hall for their graduation ceremony, Sarah Chen stood before them, still wearing her practical station uniform rather than formal dress. When I first started this program, she began, everyone thought I was going to teach you to be reckless like humans. But that's not what humanity's gift to the galaxy is about. We don't succeed because we're fearless. We succeed because we've learned to work with our fear, to use it as fuel for innovation rather than paralysis. She gestured to the various species before her, each wearing the newly designed Corv's insignia, a phoenix rising from an impossible mathematical equation. Look around you. Every one of you has accomplished things your species once thought impossible, not because you became more human, but because you learned to embrace your own species' potential. The Arxians discovered their crystalline forms could channel energy in ways we never imagined. The Hive Mind Collective found they could process multiple impossible scenarios simultaneously. Even our reformed pirates brought their understanding of breaking rules to figuring out how to break the rules of physics. The observation drone panned across the assembled graduates. Where once there would have been anxiety about defying conventional wisdom, now there was pride. Where there would have been hesitation, there was purpose. Today, you join a new kind of emergency response force, Sarah continued. One that doesn't just react to crises, we innovate through them. We don't just survive the impossible, we redefine it. And most importantly, we do it together, combining the best of human adaptability with your own unique strengths. First speaker Zena stepped forward, her patterns displaying formal ceremony colors. By the authority of the Galactic Council, I hereby officially commission this first class of the Emergency Innovation and Response Department. May you continue to show us what is possible. The celebration that followed would have shocked the Council of a year ago. Species that once avoided any hint of risk were swapping stories of their most creative solutions. Former pirates demonstrated emergency maneuvers to wide-eyed Academy graduates. Even the usually stoic hive mind representatives were attempting to master what humans called high fives. Later, in a quiet moment, Angstlick found Sarah watching her graduates from a viewport, coffee in hand as always. The Council's latest report suggests that emergency response success rates have improved by 300% since the implementation of your training program, he noted, though they're still trying to calculate the increased coffee consumption costs. Sarah laughed. Wait until they see the requisition orders for the energy drink stations we're installing next month. There are still those who say we're playing with fire, you know. That teaching other species to think like humans is dangerous. Good thing we've gotten so good at playing with fire then, Sarah replied with a wink. But they're missing the point. We're not teaching anyone to think like humans. We're teaching them to think like themselves, just without the artificial limitations they've placed on their potential. The observation drone recorded her watching her graduates, these children of evolution who had learned to see the universe through new eyes. In the training field below, a new class was already beginning their exercises, facing simulated impossibilities with determination rather than fear. You know what the really interesting thing is? Sarah mused. We're learning from them too. Every species brings their own perspective on what's possible. The Arxians' understanding of crystalline physics helped us improve our quantum drives. The hive mind's multitasking capabilities revolutionized our emergency response protocols. Even the reformed pirates' creative approach to regulations helped us streamline our procedures. She smiled, raising her coffee cup in a toast. That's the real paradigm shift. We're all evolving together, and the impossible is just the beginning. The drone's final recording showed the Hope's horizon moving through space, its mixed crew facing the unknown not with fear, but with curiosity and confidence. On its hull, beneath the Phoenix insignia, were words in multiple galactic languages. The impossible is where we begin.